All right, guys, welcome back. So this time we got the lightning cable, so we should be good with the Ethernet. Sorry about all the technical issues. I tried to fix it as fast as possible, and it looks like we might be good. So everybody's talking about and welcome back. In this channel, not only do we accurately predict the price action, and we'll go over that in a second, but we also tell you actionable steps on how to interpret the data that we're getting, and that is absolutely massive. So a lot of channels will tell you what's going on, but not only do we tell you what's going on, but what we're actually doing, step by step actionable plans to consider with your portfolio, because I think that that's important. And whether you're a Bitcoin hodler or not, like we talked about allocating some money to Ethereum. We actually just got into a long, very, very conservative long on Ethereum. Everybody's talking about, Wall Street bets and all that stuff. That's fine. And I was going to talk about it. And, I think BitBoy, so we're up a little bit on a trade right now. So a little small, and I've been taking some profits, but yeah, we're up on our Ethereum trade that we were talking about a few days ago. I was talking about it, and essentially today, it looks like we got this green candlestick, possible trend reversal. We'll see going into it, but essentially, I don't need to talk about Wall Street bets because I think BitBoy, I'd rather just outsource. I'd rather just outsource. BitBoy pretty much conclusively talked about it, and if you haven't seen his video on it, it is absolutely brilliant. And I've had a lot of issues with a lot of different people in the different finance sectors. We've made a laughing stock out of a lot of real estate experts, stock experts, financial institutions, but I love the crypto community. The crypto community is something that I can get behind. These are very smart, well-educated people that know exactly what's going on in the world, and that's the main reason why we're here in cryptocurrency is because we know about, like BitBoy was talking about today, the market manipulation. On this channel specifically, we were talking about, I think it was a week ago, we were talking about, getting into, I love the principle behind gold, but there's just so many reasons. And one of the main things that's relevant to right now is it's just so heavily manipulated. And one of the main things that we were concerned about and applicable to Bitcoin is like the derivatives market and the futures is that, is cryptocurrency going to be susceptible to manipulation? And we see that a lot more when we got the CME. But yeah, so BitBoy really covered it, market manipulation, and essentially you have people, the wrong side of people that are making money. The institutions aren't the ones making money. And it just kind of reminds me of like 2008 when so many people lost so much money, and it wasn't an issue back then. But now it's a huge issue now that these billionaires, not the working class, not the wrong side is winning according to them. And so the SEC has to step in and, and it kind of brings to light, like, BitBoy was saying, like I said, I'm not really going to touch on it too much. Just essentially, this is looking good right here. Just essentially, this is a nice amount of support. This is on 15. Just essentially, it's like this. All like the entire market is always manipulated. Like when like you could look at the bond market, you could look at the equities market, you could look at anything. It's always manipulated, and it's always been a Ponzi scheme from the beginning. Just like take a second to look at government funding. I mean, when they print money and fund it towards the government, that money is freshly printed and doesn't have the effects of inflation. By the time it finally comes to the people, that money has been heavily influenced by inflation, and so it's worth less. Whereas, when the government prints the money and then they use it towards, their agendas, then it's freshly printed and it doesn't yet have. So the entire system is fabricated into this giant Ponzi scheme, and blockchain technology and the suppression of information that's been talked about a lot, with, regardless of your opinion on Donald Trump, everybody always constantly suppressing social media. That's just not right. That's the First Amendment. And it looks like they're going after a lot of the amendments. They want to change the Second Amendment, they want to change the First Amendment. But blockchain technology, things like Theta, and this is really the relevancy. I'm not going to get into politics because I could care less. I mean, Democrat, Republican, which one said to end the Federal Reserve back when it started in 1913? Well, originally, we're not even going to go into originally, but originally there was a lot of pushback, but there was media and influence. The Federal Reserve is the third central bank. Like, a lot of people don't know how much the people have hated central banks. But my point is this: which party said that we should give the currency back to the people? That's in our Constitution. It's in one of the articles. I have a video on it back, but essentially it's like, I don't want to get into politics because politics is just smoke and mirrors. It's just an artificial illusion of choice. It's the same bird. It's different wings of the same bird. They give you like all these things. They're like, oh, this or that, like, what's your opinion on it? Nobody cares about your opinion. They're not bringing the real issues to light ever. So it's never, what do you guys think about fractional reserve lending? Do you guys think that we should, it's like the Fed, it's not backed by, when you're in history, his story, when you're learning about John Rockefeller's education system that was developed in 1908 when you're in school. Obviously, they don't teach you about economics. That was planned into the system. But one of the other things that they don't teach you about is the fact that it's like, do you want fractional reserve lending? Do you want, but like the checks and balance system, you have the judicial, the executive, I forget what the Congress is called, but you have the checks and balances. The Fed doesn't have any checks and balances. The Fed doesn't answer to anybody, and that could possibly be pragmatic. In the Constitution it says that in the Constitution, people talk about America and this and that. They're not Americans. Follow the Constitution if you're an American. A lot of we left England. The Bank of England, this is what Benjamin Franklin said. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory. Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers, and it was very well documented that we left England because of their corrupt banking system with essentially a central bank, and that's exactly what we have today in today's currency system, or in today's current system. So my point is this: when you talk about Wall Street bets, like, really more than anything else, we're not really going to cover it any more than, I like what BitBoy said in cryptocurrency. He said, if you don't know BitBoy, he's like the biggest YouTuber in crypto right now. He has like 300 something thousand subscribers. And I agree exactly what his conclusion was. It more so speaks to the fact that there's market manipulation. That's interesting. You have a long right here. You have this in. So the TA is kind of differing on the 5 minute. And again, we're looking at Ethereum. You can look at Bitcoin, and we are going to look at Bitcoin, and essentially we're going to look at Bitcoin to figure out where Ethereum's going. Because like if Bitcoin dumps, then Ethereum's going to dump just because they're so correlated. But yeah, I mean, on this channel, we're kind of saying the same thing that BitBoy was saying. It really just speaks to the market manipulation. And are we gonna really talk about Wall Street bets? Like, a lot of people don't really know the history of Wall Street bets, and essentially, I see on their posts they're doing like contracts, and like, it's all fun and games. It really is, until you get liquidated. It's called Wall Street bets for a reason, and it's like gambling, and there you would be more conservative, and you would be an investor if you got into things like Ethereum, which has like we talk about, at least a 100% unleveraged ROI, return on investment, from its current price action, with massive fundamentals, as opposed to potentially getting a 100% ROI on something that has no intrinsic value, relying on, and I'm not saying that, you can't make money off of Wall Street bets. All I'm saying is that when it comes to investing, this is like, investing, and all the uncertainty and everything with the financial markets, and they're talking about, the stock market having issues because, this is bringing up a lot of things. But really, I mean, it's like Big Boy said, it has more so to do with the fact that the SEC is no longer allowing people, they're really cracking down on it. They're not allowing people to do like buy GameStop and stuff because it's manipulating the markets too much, as if, they haven't been manipulating the markets for like a few thousand years. Like when you go back to like the Waterloo example with the Rothschilds, and people say, oh, conspiracy theory. The Rothschilds they actually did exist, believe it or not. And yeah, there was this guy, Napoleon, and it was very well documented. Like, we're not going to discuss conspiracy theories on this channel. That's not what this channel is about. These are facts. With Waterloo, essentially they manipulated the price of the bonds. What happened was, Napoleon was at war, and the country he was at war with, if he essentially lost, then the bonds would be useless, and they spread around a false narrative that that he essentially did lose, whereas the Rothschilds had a messenger that knew that they won, and so he bought all the bonds that were being sold at an extremely discounted rate, and then he essentially, in like nearly one day, accumulated most of the wealth in England. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's fact. You can look into it, that's all historical. So yeah, I mean, on Market Cipher, it's saying it's a green dot, essentially longing it. But again, this is on the 5 minute. But then you have the TA, which is differing from that idea. And what's interesting is Market Cipher is not printing a top right here in the immediate short term. So I'm gonna go over to Bitcoin, but this is just Market Cipher is not saying that this area is at top, but then also we're having a fall off of volume, so this is kind of showing that the selling pressure isn't as high. You have a lot more buying pressure. But yeah, that's just a typical example of market manipulation, and really, like I said, like, I'm not really going to go into it. BitBoy did an excellent job covering it, and I 100% agree. This more so speaks to the fact that it's more about control over the people, and when the people are trying to make money and they finally, have a lucrative way of making money, obviously, something like the SEC is going to step in and say, oh no, you can't buy GameStop because. Alright, let's take a look more so at the macro charts. This is saying a top right here. Yeah, and so that's kind of the thing. Market Cipher isn't really able to, and this is why you need a technical analyst, and this is why we're looking at Bitcoin, because Market Cipher isn't factoring in the fact that Bitcoin's a lead indicator for Ethereum, and I've already been taking profits on Ethereum all day, so I'm not going to take any more right now. And I'm debating putting my stop loss right above my entry price, because I don't even really mind cost-based averaging the position I'm in right now. Okay, let's go to the 4 hour. Oh, the Itchy Mochi Cloud, we finally see one. This is a lot of information for probably most people. So, I mean, most of the stuff I pulled up right now is moving averages. That's what the bulk of this rainbow chart looks like. This is the Itchy Mochi Cloud. Alright, I'm going to take a few of these off just for a second, and then we will get into That's pretty important. That's pretty important. That's pretty important. I like the EMA ribbon so much. Alright, we'll keep super trend on. But essentially, like, I can't really cover Wall Street bets too much because, it's relatively arbitrary and, like, reliant on, market manipulation instead of, like, intrinsic value and the fundamentals for it. It's more so gambling than anything. And when you're buying, like, these contracts and stuff, like, all it takes is one liquidation to lose your entire capital. So, like, what I'm saying is, like, yeah, I mean, it's fun in games, and, like, I'm sure for right now it's pretty lucrative. I mean, a lot of people know about it. I got debriefed on it pretty early because a lot of buddies of mine do stocks, but I mean, I don't do stocks because the money's in cryptocurrency. But what I'm saying is that it's all fun and games now. But I mean, if you're gonna do that, not financial advice, but get in, get out, because you make a few of those and then it's not backed by anything, some FUD hits the market, your thing gets liquidated. Whereas if you're longing something like Bitcoin or Ethereum that have a massive amount of intrinsic value, it's not like Ethereum's just gonna absolutely tank as we're longing it. Whereas something like GameStop, which is it relies on the market participants. And if there's manipulation with the SEC, that's just... So essentially it looks like we're just hitting this kind of support area right here, turned resistance. So essentially you have this idea of like some potential support, like the price action comes down right here. This is essentially support, it bounces up, comes back down, breaks through this area. I'm going to take off this trend-based fib. It's kind of distracting. Alright, and then I'll just take off. So super trend on the 4 hours saying sell. We're going to take off super trend. We'll take off the EMA ribbon. We'll take it off. Yeah, just clean up these charts for a second. Oh wow, okay, well this is important. So if you can't read my color code, always the lighter colors. I don't have these massive amount of MA and SMAs colored, but for this one specifically, the lighter color is the 50 and the purple is the 200. So we had a massive cross on the 4 hour. Let's see, let's measure that. Pull this up, and then we're going to take this. Looks, yeah, this is a Fibonacci. We're going to take the Fibonacci retracement and take that off. Alright, so and the volume indicator is kind of in the way. So essentially you have this right here, and then it looks like, yeah, you have a continuation down, and it looks like, okay, yeah, so like this would essentially signify, and we could go on different time frames, but essentially what this is showing is essentially, this area right here was brought down by this bear cross, essentially. I mean, it's not, yeah, I mean, so it would be a bearish cross. It wouldn't be like a death cross. And, but this shows that, this is really the reason it dumped, and then it's starting to come back up. And then on there's a few concerns, like as far as, you talk about like something like a major dump. And this right here being a low and this right here being a higher low, that's definitely good. I mean, the real concern right here is, I mean, this was pretty crazy that we broke this, but then we held 30,000, which is obviously showing a lot of buying incentive, or around 30,000. But there's really two things, like long term, like on the macro charts that we're looking at, and essentially we're very close to these critical levels. Like I've been saying since the beginning, like, and we've been 100% correct on this channel, which is just crazy. I was gonna pull up the video, but I'm like, I just want to start streaming. I'll get the video pulled up later. But essentially, everybody, after we hit this dump, everybody thought it was just gonna wick up, come back up, go back in this channel, and then continue onwards. I said, listen, guys, like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you my opinion. I'm gonna sit here and read the charts for you. And the charts say that we need to come back up, test this area right here, and test it for resistance or support. There wasn't enough buying pressure to even push us up to that area. So how can we say with certainty that, we have recovered out of the dump? We can't. And so, on this channel, we were one of the only channels that said, hey, listen, guys, like, we're going off the facts, not our opinions. And the dump continued. And essentially, what are we looking at right now? I mean, essentially, this is sort of, like we say on this channel, it's not just about reading the chart patterns, but it's also interpreting, what exactly they mean. And this is a Head and Shoulders that I think we were talking about yesterday. Was it yesterday or a day ago? We were talking about this Head and Shoulders. But essentially, we're not necessarily looking at the Head and Shoulders in and of itself. Like, we're not looking at this Head and Shoulders and saying, okay, this is a Head and Shoulders. This right here, essentially this area right here is the neckline. And then essentially, if we break that, we hit the measured move. Now, it looks like that could have played out. Let me see. So you have this right here, you measure from right here to right here, and this. Yeah, so it didn't even play out. And so, like, yeah, we're not really talking about, the pattern in and of itself, but the patterns that it creates out of this. And let me explain. So essentially right here you have, this is the head and this is the shoulder, but this turns into essentially a W pattern. And we're going to take a look at that. So, yeah, the tool brush, paintbrush. So again, this is the head, but, if you understand the TA, here's the first bottom, this is the second bottom, and some people call it the W pattern you might be familiar with. And then essentially, as price action continues to rise, we potentially hit these trend lines. Now, that's a lot of trend lines stacked up. I mean, we'll see what happens, but essentially we have the potential to hit these trend lines. If we hit these trend lines and get rejected, expect a little bit of downside. And really we're just consolidating. It is nice to see this, essentially you have consolidation right here, massive dump, massive pump, massive dump, massive pump, and then essentially massive dump, and then essentially, still it's consolidating really with volatility. It's consolidating in volatility because we don't have just this massive, downwards trending volume. Yes, the volume is technically trending downwards, but you still see this massive selling pressure. Like, you see this right here and you're like, okay, well, there's some selling pressure, and then, oh, this is lower, so then essentially there's more selling pressure, but then this negates the idea. So I don't know if you guys get that, but essentially we have, let's see, does that delete? There we go. So essentially we have high volatility consolidation, essentially, like relatively speaking to what we've been seeing with extremely low volatility. And some of these, and so, like, really we want to, look at these levels and more on the macro time frame. And that's why I keep it up, because even though, this consolidation pattern, you might question the relevancy of it as it continues to flow out, but this trend line is still valid. This trend line is still valid, so that's why I keep it. And we're still taking a look at these levels. Like I said, it looks like we could potentially be But essentially, like when you look out on the more macro time frames, you have to remember, and I see this idea a lot, and it's 100% valid, and it just kind of goes to the sentiment is, I mean, you see all these trend lines, and really what I'm doing here is I'm trying to give you the most valid, the most information, and really, I don't think that that's an issue as long as I can clearly and concisely give you like what exactly is going on. And so essentially you have a high, a lower high, a lower high, a lower. So you have this consolidation trending downwards like this. Okay, and then essentially you have a low. Is this a lower low? No, it's not. But essentially, there's an argument where it's like a wedge formation. And maybe, if you draw the consolidation pattern without the wicks, that could be the case. Let's take that idea into consideration. Because the wicks are just showing that we're... Alright, so... Yeah, I mean, you have a low, and then you technically on the wicks have a lower low. So, I mean, yeah, if you do take it from the candle bodies and not the wicks, you essentially have that, falling consolidation pattern via, some people call it a flag, some people call it a wedge, some people call it a pennant. There's just different ways of measuring it, but essentially you have this upper band right here, which is coming down, and then essentially you have this right here, which is forming, this falling consolidation pattern. Like, there's... But I mean, that's the relevancy of what we're looking at right now. And, I guess we can draw it on this channel just so that we have it. Even though I just explained it, I think it would be better if I just drew it for you guys. And then, so essentially we're just bouncing around in this area on relatively high volume. Okay, so you have this right here, that works. And then essentially you have this right here. Let's see how that lines up with this. Because you can't just you have to, do the TA correctly. So you gotta get the touch points right. Alright, that looks really good. Let's see how it looks on the other end. That looks really good. That looks really, really good. I mean, nearly perfect. Yeah, that's a really good trend line. So again, all these are extremely important trend lines that I drew, and basically, different ideas for, but essentially the main ideas that we're looking at right now, or I don't know if I want to draw another trend line to more validate, because this was, these trend lines are still valid, but this was more so when we were only, this part hadn't been drawn yet, and I kind of wanted to emphasize. That's fine, I'll just draw that too. So, you'd have this, and then we're going to change it to blue. And then what is the thickness? I think this thickness is fine. Alright. And then essentially what you would want to do is you would want to go right here. Essentially, yeah, that looks good. Let's see. That would be like an anchor point essentially. And really, this is good. That's pretty decent. When you look at the validity behind the textbook patterns, it's it's more so once you understand how to chart these 3 touch points, it's more so a science than anything. And I think this, relatively speaking, right here, probably has the most validity, and I want to use the measuring of the bodies as opposed to the wicks, because that seems to just be a lot more relevant. Yeah, I mean, no matter how you square it up, it's gonna be looking something like this. And let's just look at the touch points to make sure this is a valid consolidation pattern. One, we might need to adjust it a little bit. But essentially that's the idea that we're looking at. And essentially like on this channel, what we were looking at, and we've been very successful, it's already here, okay. What we've been very successful with is, we said we were gonna get into Ethereum, we said we were gonna start looking into Ethereum, longing Ethereum, and that has just been very, we're up on our trade on the channel that I made with you guys. And so essentially we're looking at Bitcoin, and we want to see, this seems to be a relatively massive consolidation pattern. And essentially if we can keep bouncing in this area, this should perpetuate altcoin season. And as long as Bitcoin doesn't have a ginormous dump. So we're going to continue to look at these ideas, the high and then the lower high, things like that. And then essentially a lot of people play the idea of a downtrend, and the thing is that this is a low, and then this is a higher low, this is a relatively higher low, and then this is a relatively higher low. So to say that, I'm not gonna sit here and just push narratives. That's not what I'm here to do. Other channels can push narratives, but according to the charts, relatively speaking, both micro and macro, we are not in a downtrend. We might be in a consolidation pattern, yes, high and then lower high, but to say that we're in a downtrend, and I'm not even on this channel, when I said that we were gonna, the potential for us not to have that dump over, and I'm saying that I'm not going to call the dump when everybody else is saying that we're just going to wake back up immediately. On this channel we were 100% accurate. We didn't go with the narrative because we're not here to push narratives. We're not here to agree with everybody that's big in the space so that you find that we have validity. The validity is in the TA. Unless if this is a wick, yeah, this is a wick right here. So you can't tell me that we're in a downtrend when you have this right here, which is a low, and then this right here is a higher low, and then this right here is a higher low. Just read any TA textbook, any of them, they'll all say the same thing. This is a consolidation pattern, which is perpetually good for altcoins. And right now, we on this channel, we were talking about mid caps, and mid caps have seemed to perform relatively well. And we talked about large caps, potentially not having as much potential anymore. And we say okay, Chainlink's a good project, okay, Polkadot's a good project, okay, Cardano is a great project, if not the best project, but it's that paradox in cryptocurrency where it's not necessarily about investing in the best project the entire time. It's about investing where all the money is going to be going. And like we've said on this channel, even though I like Cardano a lot more than Ethereum, Cardano is not where the money is going. Ethereum's where the money is going. And that long that we took that is being successful is kind of just perpetuating that idea. We have the long open, we killed it. Let's see, ETH is up 5.6% today. So and we called it, and essentially, it wasn't just a guess, when we were looking at Bitcoin. And this is why we continue to look at Bitcoin, even though we're longing Ethereum. It's always about that idea of, if on this channel you actually want to grow your wealth, and you actually want to, not just hold, holding Bitcoin is one thing, but if you hold Bitcoin, that's extremely like putting a bunch of Bitcoin onto a ledger and holding it, like you're gonna see returns. But during this during this bull market, like why not just long an anti-inflationary asset? And right now, in the immediate term, we're in this consolidation pattern. I'm not saying to long it right now, but in general, I've been longing Bitcoin since 11,000 all the way up to 42,000. I've made significantly more Bitcoin doing that, so it's not necessarily the fact that you can talk about leveraging, and the risk behind it, but on this channel we are extremely conservative, which gives us the ability to have 100% accuracy and the ability to realistically, conservatively, and when I do long positions, and I hope you see this on the channel, these long positions that I'm opening, they're not risky. They're not, it's where the money's going. It's like nearly a no-brainer, and we're swing trading essentially with leverage, if that makes sense. So it's like, why not? Like, why would you not take that opportunity? Whereas, some of these other things are a little more risky. Yeah, I mean, a lot of money has flown into altcoins, and we called altcoin season, which was, yeah, I mean, that's crazy. So, I mean, ETH is just like asleep right now, and you have to remember that it's correlated with Bitcoin, and so it's kind of suppressing the price artificially. But, ETH is going to, like, once Bitcoin, consolidates, basically ETH is going to break out, and it looks like that's already what we're kind of seeing. And it's just such a conservative investment, like, relatively speaking, compared to like something like Wall Street bets, where you're not really growing your wealth, you're gambling, and the odds are in your favor, but you hit like, let's say you have an 80% chance on that, that means that in approximately five, longs, you essentially lose everything. So, your first five go really well, and then essentially on your last leverage, you lose everything. You know what I mean? So, if that makes sense, like, let's say, you hit those Wall Street bets and you make, on leverage, let's say you make a 300% ROI 4 different times, and let's say you had $100, so that would be 12, you would have 1,200, you would turn 100 into 1,200. Well, on that fifth long position, you'd get liquidated and lose everything if you had like potentially 80% success rate. So on these positions, it's nearly impossible for us to lose, and it's all extremely calculated. And so that has to do with investing, the education and things like that, as opposed to risk probability on the asset itself. Now on longing the position, yes, you do use stop losses and 3-to-1 reward risk ratios and things like that, and are strategic with the um, leverage, like, and like the setup and trading breakout patterns and things like that, and you set it up and do a way where you have the highest statistical likelihood of winning. But like, I mean, just like look at these billionaires, they're shorting, and getting wrecked. So I mean, crypto, I mean, trending downwards on volume. It's kind of like consolidation. We'll see what happens with this moving average. Just the sentiment in the market has seemed to be that we hit these moving averages, we get rejected, and then we consolidate and move higher. Three green or three white crows or soldiers. Yeah, three white soldiers on the 4 hour. Unable to connect chat. What the heck? How's our connection? Please check the connection. Are you kidding me? I have my thing's on 1%. I'm gonna have to end it. I'll come back.